Mr. Pope.
Here.
Mr. Summers.
Here.
Ms. Erler.
Here.
Ms. Rano.
Here.
Mr. Kowalski.
Here.
Mr. Campos.
Here.
Mr. Robbie.
Here.
And Ms. Bushman is excused. We have a quorum.
At this time, we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Say this part. Do you want me to say that? At this time, it's our privilege and honor to have the Mandela Bliss Award. The Mandela Bliss Award is a symbol of our deep appreciation for the unwavering commitment and outstanding efforts demonstrated by our staff members for educational excellence in the Stevens Point Area Public School District. It is named in honor of Mandana Hale Bliss, Stevens Point first school teacher and trailblazer, whose exceptional service and dedication continues to inspire all of us. This award lends us the opportunity to shine a light on remarkable contributions made to this district by our staff and recognize their exemplary service. This month, we are honoring Jean Diedrich, Boston School Forest Naturalist Educator, presented by Carla Lockman, Boston School Forest Program Leader.
Hi, everyone. There are only a few people in the world who are lovingly referred to as the Boston School Forest teacher, and my friend and colleague Jean Diedrich is one of those people. Mrs. Diedrich makes the forest a special place for thousands of kids every single year. She has so much energy and enthusiasm for nature, you can't help but have a great time if you're lucky enough to be in her hiking group. One of the things that is most special is that she has affectionately named the red squirrels that live here at the school forest, Rachel, and if there are two, the second one is the brother Robbie. Each day, the kids see these red squirrels, and they wave out, "Hi, Rachel," "Hi, Robbie," and it's very memorable. So memorable, in fact, that this fall, I'm leading hikes with SPASH sophomores, and I get several questions. "Look, is that Rachel Red Squirrel? Wait, what was that red squirrel's name again? That one that lives here, that one? And how do you know that it's Rachel?" They're 10th graders, and so you can tell who had the influence on those students when they were younger. Another thing is that kids love learning about our education animals at Boston School Forest, and several years ago, Mrs. Diedrich took it upon herself to start caring for all of those animals. She trains our education interns and our SPASH interns on how to feed the animals. She cleans tanks and cages and even completely redid the salamander terrarium with her summer school class this past summer, turning a chore into a learning opportunity for them. She also feeds our animals on winter breaks and spring breaks and checks in on everyone in the summer, well, when she's not even teaching summer school. Jean is always the one who makes sure our outside animals are taken care of as well, feeding them an extra scoop of sunflower seeds before we get a big snowstorm, which we're all very excited about for tonight and tomorrow. And most recently, Jean and our caretaker, Alex, who's here today too, they proposed a new event called the Family Flashlight Friday, which was a huge success and will be repeated every fall. And she also spent New Year's Day with Alex making snow, putting snow on a trailer, hauling it out to the sledding hill so that the kids who came to the school forest got a chance to sled, even though we didn't have any snow, which was a 7 or 8 hour laborious activity, and everybody appreciates that. She's so dedicated to the kids in our district, the family who visit the forest, and the animals that call Boston School Forest their home. And it is with great pride and pleasure that I present Jean Diedrich with the Mandana Bliss Award.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated. Glad you see the value in my very small part in the school district, because I do make it as memorable as I can. As a matter of fact, we call it forest magic. But I do not do this job, this teaching job, in a vacuum. For my science teacher friends. Vacuum.
Yes.
Mr. Pope. vacuum. I do have a host of wonderful, thank you, wonderful coworkers with me, my naturalist friends, the caretaker, Carla, my leader, always helping, always supportive, science helpers, and, you know, my family, and then, of course, all the people in the school district are wonderful, and I appreciate it very much, and I will continue doing what I do as long as I can, because it is magic. I put it behind, okay.
I like it. 1, 2, 3.
All right, I'll do my best. A little sweaty here. Miguel, nice to meet you.
Good to meet you.
And nice to meet you. And
Congratulations. Your daughters. Good to see you again. Yeah, I'm all recovered from the punch.
nice to meet you, Dennis.
Yeah, absolutely. Good to see you.
And thank you, Judy.
Congratulations. Sorry I was a little slow on the update.
Yeah.
But I got in.
Great speech.
I got in.
You caught up on it. You caught up. Congratulations.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks for bringing it over.
Thanks for being here.
Oh, yeah.
Congratulations, and thank you for coming, and thank you for the support for the people who came with her. At this time, we'll have our public comments. Carolyn, did we receive any mailed-in ones?
No email.
No email. At this time, Bob Larson would like to speak on 14B, budget evaluation process.
Bob Larson, 3283 Lindbergh Avenue, Stevens Point, also a candidate for Stevens Point School Board. I will vote no on the Stevens Point District 14 million operational referendum. Why? If it should pass, the referendum would raise taxes as follows. A house valued at $200,000 would see their property taxes go up $88 the first year. The second year, the property taxes would go up $182. My own property taxes have already increased $627 as a result of a recently completed reassessment of all properties in Stevens Point. Have your taxes also increased? The following are some reasons why our taxes are increasing. In 2022, the highest salary at the Stevens Point Area Public School District was $176,384. The number of employees in the Stevens Point School District was 588. The average annual salary was $61,657, and the median salary was $59,410. The Stevens Point Area Public School District average salary was 32% higher than USA average. The median salary was 36% higher than the USA median salary. In the USA, the average teacher salary is $60,825. By comparison, in the Stevens Point School District, there are 44 teachers that make over $80,000 per year, 85 teachers that make over $70,000 per year, 88 teachers that make over $60,000 per year, and 266 teachers are below the $60,825 national average. One district administrator makes $176,384. The USA average is $140,077 per year for the same position. One business manager makes $144,970. The USA average is $84,402 per year for the same position. One director of instructions program makes $144,860. The USA average is $115,000 per year for the same position. In the Stevens Point School District, teachers work approximately 193 days per year for salaries noted above. I could go on with this positions in the school district that are making well above the national average, but I believe as people read this information, they will agree the Stevens Point School District needs to reassess their pay scales and bring them in line with the national norm. Passing this referendum would just continue to fund these high salaries and will solve nothing. I propose that the Stevens Point School District freeze all salaries that are over the USA average and cap them in the future. Then we should consider a smaller referendum so we can bring our teachers that are below the USA average up to a comparable wage. The source of my information came from govsalaries.com/salaries/WI/Stevens Point Area Public School District and the Stevens Point School Calendar, www.pointschools.net/page/5677. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob. Presentations, a Student Senate Representative Report by Matt Frank.
Good evening, board members. Over the end of December and into the beginning of January, SPASH students and faculty had a much-needed and well-deserved holiday break. It was a chance to refresh and recharge before the upcoming end of semester in late January. Just before the beginning of the break, SPASH students participated in Festival Day, which included the marching band playing Christmas themes around the school, choir performing, and the jazz band having a full holiday concert during both lunch hours. As we plan for the final push, students are preparing for upcoming exams and completing numerous semester projects. I have good news for you on the sports front, as both SPASH boys basketball and hockey teams remain undefeated. Both teams are looking to sustain their momentum as the postseason begins in the upcoming weeks. In continuation of athletic success, this is the inaugural season for the girls wrestling program. They are finding success, and we look forward to future seasons with the SPASH girls wrestling team. On Friday night, head football coach Mr. Eigenberger was presented with the News Channel 7 Coach of the Year for football. This comes as a testament to the impact he has made on players' lives and developing a positive culture within the SPASH football program. SPASH students also pursue their interest in the arts. Coming up on January 19th and 20th, a school play will be held in the form of a one-act. I hope to see you and many others in the community attending. Director Ms. Mercer is excited to present the talented students our drama department has nurtured. Last month, our student leaders within the Student Senate were able to participate in a field trip traveling to Milwaukee to see a Bucks game. Before the game started, they were presented with leadership and team-building activities by members within the Bucks organization. Many people have mentioned to me that the field trip was exciting and one of their favorite experiences within the Senate. On the 31st of the month, SPASH will have its first opportunity to talk with the parents of the class of 2027. SPASH is excited for the upcoming future of our school and look forward to welcoming them with open arms. This concludes the January briefing. I appreciate your attentiveness and look forward to our report in February.
Thank you, Matt.
And I want to thank you, and I think that you should think about getting a radio show. I think she's the most entertaining presenter I've seen in student services
you.
before.
Good idea.
Be interesting. Communication report, Sarah O'Donnell.
Probably know somebody that help with that radio show. Just saying. The communications dashboard is included in your packet. I can wait for Chris, or I can just go ahead and get started. Taking a peek at our December focus, we kicked off our 2024 referendum communications. We were able to launch our section of the webpage that is really focused on factual information about the referendum. So you can find that either by putting in that pointschools.net /referendum, or if you navigate to the webpage directly, it'll take you there. We've got a little tab for it at the top. So we're hoping people continue to utilize that. We also created updated logo and branding for that Moving Forward Together informational campaign, as well as doing some updated and understanding of your property tax bill. And then communication project planning for referendum, including video series. We were able to shoot that last week. We had the crew up here for 2 days. So we visited several different schools and got to interview teachers and staff and students. So excited to continue to put that together. We anticipate those will be ready for release likely the end of February is our target date right now for those. And then continuing to do digital outreach and informational material development. So we'll also are planning to have 2 pieces drop during January to be delivered via mail. So ahead of our informational sessions at SPASH that we're excited to have the community come and attend, in addition to all of the work that Corey and Carlin have done to really make sure that we're out there talking to folks. We had the opportunity to talk to Sparta today and have a group tomorrow night as well. So a lot of work around that. Other than that, some projects I'm working on, launched an updated 4K enrollment campaign. We saw enrollment dip a little bit for 4K last year, so wanted to really get ahead of that and make sure that we're getting that information out there. So we've launched that a little bit earlier with an updated look and some updated messaging. And then just continuing to highlight school achievements. There's always just really great things to talk about in our school district and really great staff to talk about. So continuing to do that work throughout the month. When we take a look at our website performance, I think that's next. We saw the website had over 21,000 unique visitors with 216 page views for the month, so right where we would expect that to be. And again, our most visited pages after that landing page were the staff resources page and staff SPASH homepage, excuse me. And then taking a look at social media performance, we again saw a decrease in impressions, but we saw an increase in engagement. So even though we had fewer pieces served overall, we had a higher engagement on that. So really glad to see that. Same thing for Instagram, although they also had a decrease in engagements. Instagram is so funny because it totally depends on like what we post relative to SPASH students. So we have a high SPASH content. We'll see those numbers go up in Instagram, less SPASH content, we see those numbers go down. So it's kind of a fun little piece of information. Both channels saw a spike right before break, which was not surprising. Looking at our e-newsletters produced from the communication office, we had our one internal e-newsletter, the district source, saw over 1,300 views, which is right where we expect that to be with a click-through rate of 23%, so that's a nice click-through rate. And then one external e-newsletter, our Education Connection, with a total of just over 8,000 views. That one goes out to all of our community, and we saw a click-through rate there of 9%. So again, right where we would expect that to be. Our media relations was very heavy on the referendum decision by the school board. So we had really nice coverage from our local media partners in addition to what we shared. So we are thankful for that and appreciative to see that coverage and expect that that would continue as we move through. We had a total of 13 pieces post for the month, reaching about 2.6 million viewers. To purchase that type of coverage would be about $24,000. So that organic coverage is really nice for us. And then taking a look at January, really continuing to provide that communications support really specific to referendum campaign, and then obviously continuing with the 4K enrollment campaign, and then just that day-to-day communications updates, like we all received today. Thank you very much.
Nice job. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Sarah.
Now for someone who does have their own radio show, Corey, our superintendent's report by Corey.
Sure, so a few things to highlight. First, I'd like to highlight the SPASH mini golf event that took place right before the holiday break. Jenny Bowling is a math instructor, and the tech ed department and other math instructors deserve a ton of credit for that awesome opportunity. We had 1,500 students and staff go through and actually golf. We had 157 community members show up for the community event, which was amazing given it was the first time that we opened that up for the community. And they raised over $4,600 for the event. So congrats to that team. It continues to get better every single year, and students just love it. So it's awesome. The student art show is Thursday, January 25th at Bliss from 4:30 to 6:30. I know that Miguel, Jen, and Barb have agreed to be here to work, so thanks to the three of them. And if you get a chance, feel free to come that evening or just take a walk through the halls and see the amazing artwork that our students have created. The State Education Convention is January 17th through the 19th. Carlin sent out the itinerary last week, so make sure you review that and prepare for the convention, which is next week. Portage County Business Council Annual Dinner is the 25th also at 5:30 at the Holiday Inn. If you've not let Carlin know, and if you're planning to attend, please do so as soon as possible and let her know your dinner choice. School board candidates that will be on the ballot for the spring election, and I'm going to read these in the order in which they'll appear on the ballot. They will be Bob Larson, Meg Erler, Miguel Campos, Jim Lepak, Judy Rano, Heidi Sorensen, and Will Shutter. So we have 7 people that will be on the ballot, and we do have to have a primary, so we will have a primary election on February 20th. And then the regular election is on April 2nd. That's all I have.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Dennis, I had just one comment. So I was able to go up to look at the mini golf. And I was interested to hear that it actually is a combination of 3 classes up there. So it's special ed, and it's our geometry, construction class, and then our tech ed students. But the thing I think it's important for the board to know and the community to know is our staff had to raise how much money in order to put that together. They raised several $1,000s.
For $4,600.
$4,600 that the staff did to purchase the materials. And you know, what I heard is that this thing has grown each year, as you're saying. But part of that is adding holes, part of that is adding students, part of that is adding creativity. So I just think it's important for us to be aware that those staff, not only did they work to help allow students to have that experience of building, but they also raised a lot of dollars to be able to purchase the materials. And then the only other thing I just wanted to comment, because I thought it was so cool, is that that every hole had they had certain specifics that they had to report out on for the community, and one of the requirements to win the prize for the best hole is you have to be able to make a hole-in-one, right? And so the students had to project out diagram out how, I guess it's kind of physics perspective, you wouldn't know, G, but they had to project out exactly how you could hit a hole-in-one. I just thought that was very interesting. So again, if anybody in the community is interested in helping support out in a monetary way for that event next year,
It's cool.
it was
It's
just
really
a lot of
interesting
work on the part of staff.
Yep.
You really point out example of how our staff goes above and beyond. And,
Right.
And on any given day, we have staff from teachers, custodians, food service, et cetera, who do way more than what's expected.
Yep.
By their contracts, and they do it because of their love for the job. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
Yep.
Can I ask one question? The money they raised, does that help reimburse their costs?
That pays for all the materials for the construction
But
of.
the money they raised at the event?
I don't-
Prior
The
to
money
the
that-
event.
They raise it prior to, so they
that's
can build them, so they can buy the materials, so the kids can actually build the
Oh,
holes.
so they didn't raise it at the event?
No, they raise it prior.
One other small detail is every single hole was also ADA compliant.
Yes.
So they had to make sure that it met all of the ADA requirements.
Thank you, Meg, too, for bringing that up.
Yep.
Our consent agenda, the first thing on is the minutes of the prior school board meeting. Are there any questions or comments on the minutes of the prior school board meeting as presented? Going once, going twice. I'm looking for a motion to approve the minutes of the December 11th, 2023 board meeting as presented.
Are we gonna do a consent agenda?
Oh, we're going to do them all at once?
I think that's what we typically do,
Okay, and that's
yeah.
the case. On the consent agenda, thank you, Meg, are the minutes for the prior school board meeting, the approval of the school, scheduled monthly bills, and the employment recommendations. So I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Thank you, Meg. Business Services, our Chair, Judy Randall, will give an overview of the Business Services meeting.
We had a lot that we talked about. So we talked quite a bit about the taxes and reassessment and how that impacts the levies and, you know, all of that. And we'll have a presentation later just to help everybody out because that is very confusing. We also have some housekeeping things that we talked about as far as just some businesses and processes and some other things as far as HR that will be on the agenda. So I'm just going to kind of dive into it because we've got a whole bunch of things. So the first thing is the 2022-23 annual financial audit report. So we have 2 of those tonight. So I will make a motion to accept the 2022-23 annual financial audit report.
Does she have to present?
Do
Not
we have to
necessarily.
roll for the budget?
Pardon me?
Do we have to do roll for the budget?
We aren't required to do
okay.
roll. Historically, we've done
have.
roll, but we're not required to. Yeah.
Mike has a few words to say.
Present first?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, actually, this is our annual audit report, and Amber Danielski from CLA, they're the audit firm that completed the audit. They're here, she's here to talk about it. So come on up, Amber.
Thank you. I'm going to focus more on the overall district audit. I know in the packet was also the charter school audit, and if you want to discuss that afterwards, we can go through any questions you might have on that as well. But I'm going to just start by going through the financial statement audit for the district. Just select pages, and if you have questions, please just let me know. So just past the table of contents is the independent auditor's report. So this is a 4-page letter that summarizes various required things we have to tell the district as part of the audit. And it starts out by actually talking about the overall opinion that our testing came up with for the audit. So we audit your governmental activities, your major funds, and the aggregate remaining funds. And as a result of our testing, our opinion is that the financial statements present fairly the financial position of the district as of June 30th, 2023. In layman's terms, this is a clean audit opinion. We didn't find anything that was materially misstated that it would have changed our point of view on those numbers or even the footnote disclosures in there. This is what the district strives for every year. And if there was something different, we'd be having a lot longer conversation about it. As part of our audit, we follow regular auditing standards, then governmental auditing standards, and then when you have a federal single audit, which you guys do every year because you always spend more than $750,000 of federal awards, you have a single audit. So then we follow additional audit procedures and audit standards under those items. And I'll discuss a little bit more about the single audit stuff as we go further. But overall, you know, what we do is a risk-based audit. We come in June, early July, and kind of talk to various personnel and understand what happened during the year, what changed, you know, was there personnel changes, software changes, just activity changes, whatever's going on. And from there, we determine where we think there's the higher chance that there could be something incorrect materially in one of these numbers or in one of the footnotes. And from there, we design our tests. And then we pick samples. We'd be here forever if we actually picked and looked at every single payroll disbursement or every single credit card transaction or receipt. So we pick sample basis based on those areas and just all the activity that goes on. So sometimes we could look at 10 receipts, sometimes we could look at 25 receipts. It kind of just varies by the area that we're looking at and what's all required from there. And then based on that all summarizes up into this first beginning part of this letter here where it says our opinions for the financial statements. Any questions on the letter? It didn't really change this year. Some years there's new audit standards, so then sometimes that causes that letter to change. But this year there weren't any audit standards for the year ended June 30th, 2023. There might be some changes now going forward after that, but there's always something new for keeping everybody on their toes. So if you then move to page 16, this is your balance sheet for your governmental funds. And it's summarized based on the type of fund. There's certain categories that make them, if they're major funds, so they're your more significant funds, they're going to be detailed out individually here. So that's what your general fund is and your long-term capital improvements fund. All your other funds are summarized in that other governmental funds column second from the right. That'll be, you know, so that's your donations fund, food service, community service, debt service, all that kind of stuff. But so we're going to focus more on the general fund in here. So in that middle column there, it shows that you had $36.6 million of total assets as of June 30th, 2023, mainly in cash, taxes receivable, and due from other governments. So your taxes receivable came in August, so then, that would have cleared out. And that due from other governments, that's federal grant aids. There's various different grant aids that are coming in for the majority of that amount. And then for your liabilities, you had just about $13.5 million of liabilities. The majority of that is going to be your summer payrolls and related withholdings that get paid out then in July and August. The remaining difference is fund balance. So total fund balance in the general fund was just under $23.1 million. And there's various categories here. So if it's non-spendable, that means it's basically been prepaid for next year. So like property insurance, health insurance, prepaids, that kind of stuff. If it's restricted, that means a third party gave you funds and said you have to only spend it on these certain activities. So unspent common school library funds, that's a good example of what's in here. Or anything else DPI might give you, or even other third parties might give you and say, we want you to spend it, but it can only be on X. That goes in that line. Committed is what you as a board have set aside funds for. So there's $500,000 here. That was, I believe, for the PTO playground thing project. So that's what that amount is. Your unassigned fund balance, that's what you can use for cash flow purposes, unanticipated expenditures, all those kind of things that happen that you can't plan for necessarily. So that was $22.2 million. The district has a policy that they want that amount to be 20% of Fund 10 and Fund 27's expenditures for this next coming school year. This amount was below that 20% requirement. It was under by just about $1.9 million. So it's obviously something just to be aware of. You're right within, we usually recommend anywhere between 15 to 20%, so you're still right there. And it's just obviously that's what you monitor to make sure that you have enough for cash flow, you don't have to short-term borrow, or just have a long-term plan to know that it's not gonna, dip too far low. Otherwise, yes, then you would have to short-term borrow, which then has additional costs and all that kind of stuff. Any questions on the general fund? Okay, then briefly just touching base on page 18. This is your income statement, so your revenues and expenditures for the year. And it finishes on page 19. So you had just over $100 million of total revenues. Again, and I'm sure you're well aware, state sources and property taxes get you your majority. This year it was 86% of your total revenues were in those two categories. Your total expenditures, they're where you would expect to see them, instruction and support services. As noted on page 19, just about the middle of the page, your net change in fund balance was a decrease of $2.2 million. That was basically you had more expenses than revenues that came in. Overall, if you want more information, page 52 and 53 have budget to actual information for the general fund. Specifically, Fund 10 is 52 to 53, and then Fund 27 is after that. And it'll basically show you did pretty good for expenditures, and your revenues actually were higher than budget, and so actually you spent less fund balance than you planned, basically just because some of the revenues came in a little higher. But there's a lot more information on those pages if you wish to look at that a little bit more in detail. Any other financial questions before I move into the audit findings? Okay, so then move all the way back to page 82. This section starts off with the summary of audit results. And it starts off by looking at your financial statements and then dives down into our audit of your federal awards and our audit of your state awards. Because in the state of Wisconsin, when you have a federal single audit, you're required to have a state single audit. Not every state in the country has state single audits. So it is something that could be a little different. So from your basic financial statements, you'll see it was an unmodified opinion. But under number 2, when it talks about internal control over financial reporting, you'll see we had a significant deficiency. This is the same one we've talked about in years past, where this whole bound document, the district is responsible for preparing about 90% of it. That's just the way the rules are. But for cost-benefit purposes, you hire us to help summarize it and compile it. Not unusual, nothing that we don't necessarily see. We prepare for districts bigger than you guys, smaller than you guys. It's just something to be aware of. And obviously, as you're looking through the financial statements, if you have questions, reach out to us and we can help walk you through. And it's a finding because obviously when you have somebody else outsourced to do it, there's always a chance some change might not get updated in a footnote, even if it's minor, just something about your compensated absences policy or something along those lines. So that's where that finding's for, and that's just partly why it's important for me to come here and talk to you guys about the financial statements, and also for you to ask questions of your business staff as things are going on, so you can understand what's in there. Then from your federal awards perspective, this year we also had some significant deficiencies in internal control over your federal awards. We tested the food service program, the ESSER program, and also Title I. And our finding was in regards to the food service program. What we found is when we tested the claims that were submitted on a monthly basis, that the district underreported meals. And so our recommendation, which is obviously better than over claiming meals, but our recommendation was to implement another check of those numbers before it gets submitted to DPI to make sure that, you know, there's no clerical errors or because we all have done transposition errors where you put a zero somewhere, or, you know, an extra zero somewhere along the ways. And that's where having one other set of eyes look at the numbers before you hit submit can help you catch that kind of stuff. It's not always perfect, but it's, again, another step to help you make sure you capture everything and report to DPI what you should be reporting. Then moving to page 83, on the state side, we looked at your common school library fund, general transportation aid, equalized aid, and personal property aid, or per pupil aid, excuse me. And we had a finding in terms of the general transportation aid. This was similar to the food service one where there was clerical errors in the data for the pupil ridership, that there was a duplication of numbers when the reports were run out of the system. So our recommendation is to, one, review the system to make sure the parameters are set right so you can get the right data out of it, and then also just have somebody else double check for reasonableness and to make sure there's no clerical errors to the extent you can, to also help alleviate potential future issues in that area. And those were our findings for the year. Does anybody have any questions on those?
Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, that was all I have, unless you guys, like with the charter school audit, that's something that got triggered because of the special grant, the expansion grant that's on there. DPI requires it based on the way the grant agreement is written. There's nothing really unusual with that. We've done it for other school districts throughout the state that have those type of grants. And so I believe this is year 1 of 3. And so if you have any questions on that, please just let us know. It's a little different just because it's only a subset of all your activity. But, you know, we didn't find anything unusual in what we did there.
If you find a pattern, for example, the fund balance is 15 to 20%, that's kind of the range, and we're on the higher end of that, 20% is our threshold. What do you find through the state? I mean, where are people at? I'm sure they're all over the place, but can you kind of capsulize that a little bit?
Yeah, they're actually really all over the place. That's why we recommend 15 to 20% because we feel that that's pretty much a decent benchmark. But I mean, I have some school district that set it as low as like 5% just because they don't mind the short-term borrowing. Some prefer closer to 25%. I think it's, you know, to me 15 to 20% works out because by the time you get your, your taxes receivable come in August. And so you get a good chunk there. And then you do start getting some of your aids. And as long as you stay current on requesting reimbursement requests for your grants, that helps alleviate any concerns if you get too low or anything, because you never want to wait too long either to request that fund, you know, because when you're paying out so much for salaries for Title I, you know, to get that money in and file your claims timely is good. We have some that file less often, I guess, and so then that plays into where they keep that percent. But to me, I wouldn't never want to go much beyond 15 to 20%. It would 25 maybe, but it would really truly depend on how your operations are and where your cash flows are. Because let's say payroll, for example. Some districts stagger their summer payrolls a little differently. So maybe they don't need as much at year end because they're doing it more over 24 pay periods instead of 26, or 20 instead of 26, or stuff like that. So that plays into how you want to determine where you really want to be.
Right. Thank you very much. Mm-hmm. Judy, do you want to handle the action then?
Yeah, I will make that motion.
That's good. We have a first and a second.
You state what the motion is.
Yeah, the motion is to accept the 2022-2023 annual financial report.
Could I just ask a question?
I'm sorry, yes.
Oh, I'm just wondering, you know, we have 2 significant findings, one with respect to federal, one with respect to state. Could you just talk about kind of how we're moving forward to take a look at ensuring that doesn't happen. I know it hasn't
Right.
happened in the past.
Cabinet plans to, this week, actually talk through how we're going to make sure that we get another set of eyes on some of these things before they get submitted. Thankfully, they're minor things that shouldn't take much to address. So we will make sure that we put those measures in place and that this doesn't happen again.
And obviously, as you're working through stuff, feel free to reach out. And, that's what happens sometimes is it's just, I think especially, let's say, food service.
Yep.
This was the first year back to normal reporting. And so sometimes things happen. So, I feel you guys have pretty much talked through, and I know especially when with transportation, you guys have put something in place already with that. So not overly concerned.
Thanks, Meg.
Thank you.
And since it's a financial action, do we want, would you mind doing a roll call then?
Sure.
On these two issues? Thank you.
Ms. Rano,
Yes.
Ms. Portson,
Yes.
Mr. Summers,
Yes.
Mr. Kowalski,
Yes.
Mr. Campos,
Yes.
Ms. Erler,
Yes.
Mr. Pope,
Yes.
Mr. Robbie,
Yes.
and motion carries.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thanks for coming in. Thank you.
So I'm going to move into the financial audit report now for PODS. So I'm going to move to accept the 2022-23 annual financial report for PODS.
Second.
Are there any questions or comments?
There weren't any findings?
I'm sorry, what?
There weren't any findings for PODS?
No.
No? Okay.
And would you mind taking a roll call vote again then?
Sure. Ms. Rano,
Yes.
Ms. Portson,
Yes.
Ms. Erler,
Yes.
Mr. Pope,
Yes.
Mr. Summers,
Yes.
Mr. Campos,
Yes.
Mr. Kowalski,
Yes.
and Mr. Robbie,
Yes.
and motion carries.
All right. So we have the 10-year capital improvement plan revision. We'll have some information before we do any motions.
Good evening. This item was brought up by the concerns from the principal at SPASH, as well as technology and our buildings and grounds, and others of us on the cabinet. We have some significant safety concerns regarding communication within the SPASH building in the event of emergencies and whatnot. The Secure Tech Wave Plus system that had been in place has no longer been operational. It's defunct now. It was deactivated, and the current system is not capable. Current PA system is not capable of. Excuse me. This microphone needs to be fixed now too. The current system is not capable of reaching into all areas of the school, so there's some significant safety concerns. And that has come to light with a couple of events that have already occurred this year. As a result, the plans to work this PA replacement at SPASH have been moved up. And so I bring before you a plan, the 10-year plan again. I request that you approve the modification to put this project on the 10-year plan. We need to do that now so that we can get the ordering done and the quoting done and whatnot, and get that ordered so the material can get here in time for this summer, because we have to do the work in the summer. It's too much of a major project to do while students are in the building. And so the money is in the 46 fund, the operational fund. It doesn't come out of the general fund. It's $490,000, so it's a sizable amount. But we're really recommending we move that up and take care of that. So if you have any more questions?
Just a question. Can we ensure that all of the parts are there before we install? At an area school, they didn't have parts for 2 years, and they did an install of a PA system. And so it caused an even larger issue. So just to make sure that we have all of the parts before we actually do that.
Thanks for that heads up.
Noted.
Thanks.
So we're looking for a motion to approve the revised 10-year capital improvement plan as presented.
So moved.
Second.
I just had one question again, and maybe because I'm just confused, Tom, but when I looked at the revised capital improvement plan, the number next to SPASH said 455,000. But the number that we saw in the summary is 490,000. So I'm
Yes,
just trying to
You're
determine,
looking in the wrong year.
Where
You're
am I-
looking at 2024. You need
Okay.
to look at fiscal year 2025, which
okay,
is
so
the
we're
second column.
adding the 490 to
In the
fiscal year
2025
2020.
fiscal year, because it won't be done until August. And so July and
Okay.
August is in the next fiscal year.
Okay, we won't have to make any kind of down payment on that in '24?
I've not been advised of that at this point. This material will be ordered
Right.
prior to that, but the work won't be started until summer.
Okay,
And won't be started until June, and they won't be into it, really hard and finished until August.
okay, all right. Thank you for that clarification.
You're welcome, thank you.
So we have a motion and second to approve the revised 10-year capital improvement plan as presented. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Passes, and we go on to E, temporary closure of polling place for primary elections.
Okay, we have a situation where we have 7 people running for the school board, which is one more than twice the number of positions that are up for office. According to statute, if that occurs, we're required to hold a referendum. A referendum.
Primary.
Primary referendum.
Yeah, we could do that too. A primary is what I meant to say, excuse me. In the case of Sherry in Wood County, there are only 7 people who actually vote there. So as we have done in the past on a number of occasions, we've offered the opportunity to have those 7 people go over to the village of Millador and vote there. It requires you to approve this motion to do that. Both clerks have been talked to, and they welcome the idea. They won't have to keep the polls open in Sherry for all day, just for 7 people to show up, and whoever might possibly walk in to register on that day. So we recommend that this get approved.
All right, so we're looking for a motion to approve the temporary closure of the polling at the town of Sherry Town Hall and combine the town of Sherry with the village of Millador for voting purposes in the February 2024 primary election. Any discussion?
Just for clarity's purpose, it did state, I believe, that the clerk would actually reach out to these 7 individuals to make them aware, correct? I think, so the public knows. We're not shutting down a polling place, then no one's gonna be, that's important to have on the record. So that is what it said, and that is what
Yes.
we, crystal clear, that's what's going to happen? And how do we verify that that's going to happen? Like, is there somebody responsible to make sure that clerk does do that in time to make sure those 7 people were notified?
Yes, the business office will follow up on that. They've given us the authority, yes, that they're gonna do that, but we will follow up with them to make sure that they do.
We work with the clerks, and the
Yep.
clerks notify their constituents, et cetera.
Okay.
This has been done several times. It's not a surprise to anyone.
And they actually reached out to us and requested,
Sure.
so.
Are there any other comments or questions regarding this motion? Going once, going twice. In that case,
We need a motion and a second.
I thought we had,
So moved.
Judy?
Second. Oh, we had that already. All right, we have a first and second, again, probably twice. But this time, all those in favor, aye.
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 Opposed? Thank you. And thank you, Carl.
It's a super motion.
Understanding reassessment, this is a much awaited presentation by Dr. Owens.
Yes, thank you. I've been asked to make this presentation to help facilitate perhaps a better understanding of what reassessment means and what it does, in light of the fact that Stevens Point has gone through a recent reassessment, and we're aware that there's a considerable amount of misunderstanding about what that does and why it is. So thanks to Mike, he's helped me with a bottle of water so I don't get so perched as I try to work my way through this. I want to point out that this is, the numbers in here are just made up numbers. The point of this is to understand the concepts. The numbers themselves are of little importance other than to convey those concepts about reassessment. And, why do we have reassessment? Well, the whole purpose is to ensure fairness. Before The process of reassessment, homes of similar value were built over time, and the amount that they were assessed were different. They might be exact same value of homes but over time, because they were built at different times where the assessment levels were different, they were evaluated or assessed at different levels, values. So as a result, the amount of property tax they paid were different. And as that continues over time, you have a situation where somebody in a home built first in early years is paying less in tax than somebody who's built a more recent home when perhaps they're the same value. So the whole point of the statute is to ensure fairness. On the next slide, this is showing 3 such houses in terms of this concept. You have the first house that was is valued. It was built at the time at $75,000. A second home was built at $100,000, and the third home was built at $125,000. The difference occurred because costs of the material were different over the years, etc. In this example, to convey the concepts, they're going to be reassessed at their value where all 3 homes are of the exact same value, so that you can see the workings of the concept. You can see on the right there, the property tax being paid by 1 is $1,500, by 2 is $2,000, and by 3 is $2,500. The total property tax is to be raised is $6,000. Again, it's just a small number. We're just trying to convey the concepts. This is the local property, the tax that has to be raised to support the school levy, the municipality levy, the technical college, county government, and whatever else may be comprised on your property tax bill. So on the bottom, you see the municipality, the property value, or the assessed value of the district, of that municipality, rather, is $300,000. So when you divide the municipal levy by the total property value, then you get a mill rate of $20 per thousand. So if you multiply $20 times 300, you'll get the 6,000 that they have to generate. Okay, this is the mechanics of it. Now, as you move on to the next slide, which we'll do, you can see now the homes have been reassessed. At this point, we're not changing the property tax to be raised, just so that you can see how this works conceptually. The average assessment for the municipality in this case is 30%. So of all of the properties within the municipality, the average increase is 30%. So they're all 130,000. You can see a 73% increase for the first home, 30 for the second, and only 4% for the third. But after reassessment on that same 6,000 that the municipality has to raise, they each pay 2,000, which under the concept is fair because they're all of the same value home. One has an increase of $500. One has no change in their tax because they're at the 30% mark, which was the average, and I'll talk about that later. And the other has a reduction, actually, in their tax load of $500. Now, just not taking that taking that on its face value, what does that fact actually tell you? It tells you that for however many years there were between the last assessment, reassessment, and this one, the person in home 1 was underpaying the amount of tax that they probably should have been paying for several years. And the person in home 3 was probably paying more than their fair share, because their tax now is dropping by $500. So what this does, you can very plainly see that it balances out a sense of fairness here, that people with the same value homes are paying the same tax, portion of the tax bill. And now you see the total property value at the bottom is $390,000. So when you divide that by into the municipal levy that has to be raised of $6,000, the mill rate has changed now to $15.38 because the property values have increased. It was $20 a thousand, but now the property value has gone up, but we haven't changed the numerator. The denominator changed, but not the numerator. So as a result, the mill rate changed and it dropped to 1538. Now, since the village, this is a rule of thumb. It's not an absolute, it's just a general guide to help you in terms of understanding the concept. But as a rule of thumb, if a particular municipality's average increase were to go up, let's say 30%, if your reassessment value went up less than 30%, you'll probably see a reduction in your tax burden. If it's greater than 30%, you'll probably see an increase in your tax burden of some amount. And if it's right at the same amount, like 30%, just like in this example, there'll probably be little difference from one year to the next. The confusing part is people see like a 73% increase or a 30% increase and they think their tax is going up 73% or 30% or things like that. That's not necessarily the case. In this case of the first home, the percent increase was 73%, but their tax increase was 33%. Okay? So they don't necessarily have a direct correlation. But the concept is there that somebody was paying a little less than they should have, somebody was paying a little more than they should have, and the reassessment brings it in alignment so that people are paying the same amount, fair share. Now, if we add an additional tax in this year after the reassessment, that's what the next slide is. And this shows that the property tax went up to now $6,200, that another $200 that the municipality had to raise. So you see a column there that says new levy increase. Each one went up $67 more. So everyone is paying $2,067. So you see it's fair to everybody in terms of the concept of how that's going. Some folks think, incorrectly so, that when the reassessment creates changes, like if it went up 30%, that somehow automatically means more money for the school district or for the municipal. That's not the case at all. That's completely false. If you see in our examples, we stayed with 6,000, 6,000. It didn't change anything, and now it's 6,200. That doesn't case. The only governmental entity that I'm aware of in which the levy rate generates more revenue is the technical colleges. They raise their money based on a levy rate that the legislature sets and governs and controls. In that case, then whatever that rate is, that's what is charged or passed on. That's how they generate theirs. And I'm not sure if that's going to continue forever. I think there's been some discussions on changing that, but I don't know where that is. I haven't been following it. So, subject to your questions, that's it. It's kind of a confusing and frustrating subject, especially when you're going through it. But knowing that rule of thumb can give you a considerable peace of mind. Yes, ma'am.
Tom, can you speak to who decides that? I mean, my understanding is that it's not the municipality that decides they're going to revalue. State law requires
yes,
could you just speak a little bit to what the law requires, state law requires?
I'll talk about the concept. I did not look up the precise number. I apologize for that. The concept is that once the assessed, I got to back up another step. There's a thing that we use that's called equalized value. We use that at this level because that's also the same as fair market value. That's the full value, 100% value of all property in our district. We're required by state law to do everything on that basis because we have 18 municipalities that we deal with, and every one of their assessed levy rates is completely different than the other ones. So what we work on is the fair market value. Every one of those 18 municipalities have a fair market value amount. You'll see it on the tax bill in the upper left corner, maybe the second or third box on the left. It'll say fair or full market value, MRKT value, and that's the same as our our equalized value. So with the equalized value, we can then take whatever portion the various municipalities are of our total district, comprise our total district. Like in the case of Stevens Point, it's about 36% of our district is in Stevens Point. So 36% then of our levy would be apportioned, would be levied onto the city of Stevens Point. And that's based on fair market value. So just like in the slide there, we saw everybody at 130 making it fair. That's what equalized does. It makes it fair for everybody. So then the municipality takes that tax levy amount that's been given to them, and they have to turn around then and apportion that out to all of their taxpayers. Okay? Theoretically then, if they were at 100% full market value, their mill rate would be identical to the school's mill rate. But what happens, of course, is this reassessment process is not a pleasant one. It's time involved, it's difficult, and people misunderstand it, and there's sometimes people get a little angry with the assessor and the municipalities, et cetera, and they worry about it. Does this mean a big increase and all of that? So there's generally a period of time before that's done again. The statute says that once it starts to fall, the assessed value starts to fall too low. By too low, I mean if 100% is full market value, if they let it start to erode and get down to assessment to where it's down to about, I'm not sure of the number, I'm telling you this up front, let's say 85% or something like that, then the statute calls for a reassessment to bring it back, people back in line, because they don't want them to get so far out of line that the adjustment is intolerable, if you will. So they allow maybe a 10 to 15% slide there, and I don't know if percent's the right word, but dollar, a mill maybe they get down. Yeah, it would be 100% down to 80-85% would be 10 to 15%, somewhere in there, and then they have to do another reassessment, and then they bring everybody in alignment, and that process happens again. The municipality can, in a reassessment, they can go to 100%, they can go to less than 100%, or they can go above it, 105, 110%, and then it takes longer before they get to that point of reassessing.
And who directs the municipality that they have to do another reassessment? Does that come from the Department of Justice?
It comes from the Department of Revenue.
Revenue, that's what I meant, revenue.
Yeah.
I meant revenue.
There probably are times when the Justice Department get involved.
I meant revenue, sorry.
That's a different kind of.
I was dealing with them today.
Yeah.
So.
But every municipality goes through this at some point. And again, everybody's different in terms of where they are, where they get down to it, how long it takes to get to that point where the trigger gets set and you've got to do a reassessment. So it's just different for everybody. We have 18 municipalities. There's going to be 18 different trip points.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you. Thanks for that report. That was for information only. I take it there are no other questions for Tom? Oh, in that case, we'll go on to number 9, Human Resources. And we have a presentation. Who's going to present? Beth, on recruitment and retention.
Good evening. At the HR committee meeting, we talked about how we periodically conduct market analysis for positions just to ensure that our wages are competitive. We especially look at those positions where we may have challenges with recruitment as well as retainment. So the special ed educational assistant position, we've been struggling to fill some of those positions since the beginning of the year. And we more recently had 3 openings in the last month or so. So when we looked at the market, and I'm talking just local market at this point, we found that our entry hourly rate is $1.13 below our local market rate. We know this is not the greatest of timing to make this request, but we really believe that we need to be competitive, at least with our local market, and also do what we can to retain the employees that we have in those positions today. So we know that It will cost approximately $94,000 to bring the level up, which would be $17 an hour, the entry rate. And we have, to cover that, what we're proposing is we have experienced some savings in employee replacement costs, close to $109,500. Additionally, we believe that we'll be receiving some extra gains in interest to approximately $200,000 from what I understand from Mike. So we know that those are one-time kind of events and that we're going to have to budget for this going forward. If by chance the referendum does not pass, the administration is committed to making the necessary reductions to cover this increase.
Are there questions?
Is this just the starting wage?
It would go through the entire range, so the entire range would be adjusted.
The whole scale?
Yeah, on that level.
Okay.
Beth, when you say you did analysis of local market, who is the local market?
Wausau, DC Everest,
So like
Rapids,
positions.
Marshfield. I often looked at Mosinee as well, just because of the proximity to us.
Does this bring them even then, like an average, or
Average.
does it bring them a little higher than?
It depends on the district. It's just an average. Yeah.
I just want to say how much I appreciate that you and your committee has looked at this. We know that how important, maybe some people don't know. If some people think that's being overpaid, they have no idea what these people do on a daily basis. And they have an extremely difficult job, not only for the students, but with staff, the things that they do. And we have a very competitive market. It's not like it was 10 years ago. We are paying, similar money to entry-level individuals untrained, on many jobs throughout this community. And this is a highly skilled job. And it's one that I'm amazed we get people to come in here at that amount and that we're able to keep them stay. Obviously, we're having difficulties doing that now, but the work that they do is certainly warranted that pay, if not more. So I really appreciate you looking at this time. Thank you.
Did you want to?
This is just for special ed. This would not be including ESL or any other aids, correct?
It would be in that, there's 3 levels on that compensation plan, so it would be for anyone in that level 2. I can tell you exactly the classifications in there. Just bear with me here. So that would be special ed EA, special ed bus EA, the Boston School Forest Caretaker Liaison, the ESL Educational Assistant, and the lead care provider, that is for childcare.
Childcare. Didn't we already give an increase to childcare in September?
They would be within
Right.
this level 2, so I don't
No?
believe so.
Okay. I thought we brought it up in September, how much we were reimbursing.
Oh, that's for 4K.
Oh, 4K, okay.
Yep.
Are there other questions or comments for Beth?
I had a
SG.
couple.
Go ahead.
What is the starting pay for a general aide?
A regular ed EA is $15.01.
So it doesn't affect them at all. So the other question
At
I'd
this
have is Dennis asked, or Barb asked, how are we compared to other districts? I would be interested, and I don't know how you could do this, how are we to our competitors? Aren't always other districts, it's general pay around
Private
town.
sector, you mean?
Yeah.
Those are difficult numbers to get, but obviously we see we're hiring signs all over the city, and we know, I think somebody said Wendy's was at $17 an hour.
Yeah.
And Express, 16 to 25.
Yeah.
That's
So all
tough
we really
competition.
have to go on there is anecdotal
Right.
evidence.
Yeah.
Can you say what does a aide top out at?
The regular ed or the
Top and
special ed?
bottom. Both.
Okay, so right now, the special ed tops out at $22.70, and the regular ed EA position tops out at $19.81 an hour.
And how long do they have to be working together?
Well, that's 20 steps, so depending on where they come in, based on their experience. Yeah.
Wow.
There's a lot of steps.
Other comments or questions for Beth? Beth, thank you very much, by the way.
Oh, one
Good work. May, go ahead.
Beth, I know we've been struggling, well, forever with special ed EA. I believe last year we went through a good portion, if not the full year, with vacant positions. And could you just speak to what happens when we wind up with that? Because I know a number of the students that these individuals work with actually have IEPs with the district. So could you
Correct.
just speak to kind of how things are covered, or, you know, talk a little bit about the struggles we've seen as a district in this position in particular?
Sure. I think the behavioral concerns are greater than they have been in the past. I know that Jenny has gone to additional training to provide additional equipment, protective equipment. We've looked at schedules, trying to rotate, you know, individuals through a schedule. We are offering, obviously we always offer EAP services to try to deal with some of the stress, but we're also offering additional PD for that as well. Some of the positions are student specific. And so, you know, a person will come in and remain with that student as long as they, you know, as they progress through the district. But we do have, you know, regular full-time positions that have been individuals that have been with us for a number of years. So it's a tough position because they're, you know, they're frontline working with students.
And sometimes, Meg, those positions would end up being filled with a temporary substitute in the role, which doesn't really offer the kind of consistency oftentimes that those students need.
If we have an EA that is out, who fills that position?
We attempt to get a sub.
And sub pay is how much a day?
Sub pay right now, I want to say, is at 15, no, that's not right, $14.75 an hour. Mm-hmm.
With the loss of 3 this month,
Mm-hmm.
are we somehow able to meet the legal requirements still?
That's probably a question for Jenny. We have to meet those legal requirements.
You have to scramble to do
Kind of
it.
go through Plan A and down. Plan A is that we put in through Fidelis, and we get some fabulous folks who walk in and jump right in. You know, there are definitely regulars who return and are happy to be in as subs. You know, after that, you go through, you know, who can cover what. Sometimes that means, you know, people are covering it at other times that they wouldn't necessarily be working with a student. So really it's just all hands on deck to make sure that's covered. And then sometimes there's those random moments, someone's absent, someone's sick, you know, and so again, you kind of put those puzzle pieces together really early in the morning before the kids come in.
Thank you.
Other questions or
I
comments?
just have a comment. I mean,
Go ahead.
we discussed this in great length in the business services, and given the timing, I wasn't a fan of the timing of this right now, you know, in full disclosure. And you know, Meg had brought up that if we were able to make this cost neutral, then I would be in favor of this. And part of the reason is it seems like it's not just a financial thing. A dollar isn't going to make or break somebody not quitting the environment. Let's be honest here. If you can go get work at Quick Trip or Wendy's for $4 more an hour and never be subjected to any of this, that kind of person is going to do that regardless of how much you pay them here. So the environment. So my biggest concern was, what kind of things are we doing to make the environment better? Because you'd have to pay me $100 an hour to do that job, and we're never going to do that. So, you know, I want us to be cognizant of the fact that every district is experiencing issues with this. That's not going to change until their environment changes. I think it's important that the public understands that why I wasn't a big fan of right away giving it without making it cost neutral, especially before a referendum, is it's not addressing the problem. Paying them $1 more is not going to address the problem. Yeah, it's a step of like 100 steps that need to be taken in the right direction. So it's great. It shows that we're moving towards the right direction. But if I were somebody in that position, I'd rather be hearing, what are you going to do to make my environment safer? So I just want to put that out there so people that are watching this and understanding that this is another cost, that as a board, the administration, that's something that needs to be looked in constantly and reported to us. What are we doing to make them safer?
Is it
Whatever that
cost
looks like.
neutral, though? I mean, didn't you say the
This
money's
year?
coming from?
For the remainder of this school year.
Meg, Miguel, I think that, first of all, I agree with you. I think that if they were to speak honestly, I think our group of EAs, regular and special ed EAs throughout the district, feel at very times that they are kind of the forgotten souls.
Sure.
In many, many ways, because sometimes they are. I mean, everyone's busy doing their job and everyone does it, but sometimes we forget that these people are being compensated at a level which is much different than our other professionals in the building. But one step in that is to if we pass this within a day or two, we'll have a group of employees that say, hey, they kind of get it. They heard us to some extent. It's only one step, and I think there has to be lots of things, but I think changing that compensation rate at this time in the middle of the year, partly out of necessity, but partly out because we recognize the deficiency in that area, I think that does make a statement to our employees. You know, I've worked with EAs for going on 40 years, and I can tell you that it is very common that they feel that they are kind of last on the totem pole. And now for one meeting, we're taking time to say, hey, we get it, and we're going to do something about it. It's not enough, and some of the issues that they have are the same issues our teachers have in terms of behavior and safety and support, and that's our job as well, but I think this is just one step. So I hope you do support it.
And I am committed, Miguel, to bringing back information on steps that we are taking to keep our staff safe in those programs with tough kids.
Okay.
This is unsafe at times.
And I guess a question, since you're familiar with this more, Beth, not to argue with you, Dennis, but districts around us that are getting paid more for these positions, are they also leaving at high numbers?
I think the challenge, I don't know what their turnover rates are. I know there was a challenge at the beginning of the year in filling those positions. I remember Wausau specifically because they were another district that was interviewed at the same time that we were interviewed. I did look on Weekend to see how many openings they have, and I saw one opening on their website. Again, I don't know what their turnover rates are. I do know that it's the sub-rate fill. We're doing better than our neighboring districts for the SPED EA position, and that's only at 79% fill rate. So, you know, it's very difficult to fill those sub positions.
Miguel, thanks for your comments. Are there any other comments by any other board members or questions?
No,
at
I
this
just
time?
want to say thank you very much because we did spend a lot of time during our meeting talking about this. So we appreciate you coming back with everything we asked you to.
Any other questions, comments? Going once, going twice? All right, well, I'm looking for a motion to approve the wage adjustments for the special education educational assistant compensation level to the market rate.
So moved.
Second.
All right, right, at this time, we'll have all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? It passes, thank you.
Thank you.
And
Thank
thanks
you,
again
Beth.
for all your
Thanks,
work.
Beth.
At this time, we go on to number 10, educational services, and the chair, Pope.
We had two items. There were no voting items. One was a community grant for before and after school daycare, and the other one we'll get to later on, the budget evaluation. So the first one, Chris is going to address.
Sure. Thanks, G. And just wanted to inform all of the board and any community members that happen to be tuning in tonight that the district has engaged in the process of applying for a 21st Century Community Collaborative Grant in partnership with the Boys and Girls Club, which would offer before and after school programming for students primarily at Madison, McKinley, and Jefferson elementary schools. That extends programming that we have operating at those 3 sites at this point in time, currently funded by ESSER 3 funds. As you know, those ESSER 3 funds will be depleted at the conclusion of this academic year in 2024. So we're looking for options to sustain that programming. And we are slated to submit that grant. We were working on some final touches today. We had completed a video interview that I was able to do with reps from the Boys and Girls Club earlier today, and just putting on the final touches to that grant application. It is a requirement of the grant that we make the community aware of our intent to apply, and also to notify the community that we'll make that grant application available to the public on our website once it's been submitted. So we're looking forward to reporting back whether or not that grant has been funded as early as late April or early May. So,
Thank you. Thanks, G. Oh, you have,
I had a
G?
comment to make about
Go ahead,
that.
sure.
'Cause we had a pretty good discussion about this at our Ed Services meeting. My concern is, and I'm sure a lot of people, this is that, and I was assured that every family has access to before and after school daycare in our district. And that's, you know, and I'm sure they have that information. It's up to them to go get it. And that was one thing, to make sure we weren't leaving anybody out. And then later on in discussions, I found out that the Y is a player in this also. That it would never came out in the meeting, but later on, so they have a part to play in this.
Correct. Yep. And they wouldn't be, the Y is not a partner in this particular grant application, but we do have partnerships with the Y, and we do have both before and after school programming running through the YMCA at our sites. Good clarification.
Okay. Thank you, committee members, for bringing us up to date. Brings us to 11, Student Services Open Enrollment Space Determination for the 24-25 school year. And Jenny, are you going to, yes, you are. You're moving.
Hi, good to see all of you. I hope you had a nice holiday.
Yeah.
Hope you brave the storm. See what we get tonight, right?
We don't have school tomorrow, so.
Right? So today from Student Services, this is an annual item that comes to the board every year for a motion for vote, talking about open enrollment space. So in open enrollment, we kind of talk about that in two different categories, one being general enrollment, so students who are just general population students, and then enrollment for students with disabilities or students with IEPs. And it's up to you as the board to make decisions annually about that so that we have decision rules and safeguards so that we know when would we approve that, how would we approve that, and how many spaces potentially would we approve, knowing that potentially we have individuals from neighboring areas or just other attendance areas who might want to come to our district. So the information that I provided to you, it gives you information on both the general and the special education. For general enrollment, you know, in general, we look at lots of different things when we consider would we be able to take enrollment for students, whether that's our practices, policies, just space, things like that. And in general, though there may be students who open enroll in, there's always some students who open enroll out. So with general education, for many years, the board has approved just as many students who might apply as a general ed student to be able to be accepted into our program. And again, that wouldn't be a change. That's been what you have decided as the board for many years, so I would recommend that you keep that decision for this next year. For special education, we've gotten some updates and guidance from the Department of Public Instruction. For many years, we've gotten kind of a little formula that you'd take a look at your number of students, what ages they are, maybe what disability they might have, maybe assign them kind of like a number and kind of come up with a count and call that a caseload, and that we'd say, well, that's an appropriate caseload for a special education teacher. But many times it came down to counting students. And as we've kind of talked about today a lot about special education, which I appreciate, just counting students of special education really doesn't quantify or describe their needs. They range greatly. So the department has really given us some updates to really move away from just counting number of students to really learning more about our special education teachers' workload. So that is not only just the number of students that they work with, but also all the pieces that are put on their plate day to day, whether that's assessing students, supervising and supporting special ed assistants, training them, collaborating with our nurses, collaborating with counselors, calling and scheduling with parents, paperwork. Many things are on their workload as a special education teacher, and some of them unique to being a special education teacher. So with that, over the years, you guys have approved a few spaces in certain programs in special education, but I just wanted to give you that update overall, that's something as I'm looking at projections for next year in general, not just related to open enrollment, that it's something for us to learn a lot more about so that we can continue to attract and retain high-quality special ed teachers and their assistants as well. For determining open enrollment specifically, I'm making similar recommendations to what the board voted on last year. It's probably not a surprise to you that special education, our students require a lot of services and supports, and that we feel like those are the students that we need to focus on. That there wouldn't be a lot of capacity, if any, in many of our programs to take on additional students who would come from other districts. The only place that I would feel that we could take on any students who might seek open enrollment would be two of our specialized programs. One would be Point of Discovery, or PODS. They have a specific application process that students would have to go through. We do have one teacher out there, and I believe with projections that one student could be potentially accepted through open enrollment, again, if they meet the PODS requirements as well through that application process. And then I'm recommending that we keep 3 spots in our Project Search. So Project Search is a wonderful opportunity for students who've met our traditional graduation requirements, but need some additional training, support, and vocational skills. So they get to work with one of our highly specialized special education teachers out at UWSP. We have a partnership with them. They work on the morning on soft skills, life skills, vocational skills, and then they go out in the afternoon and they have on-the-job work. They get to do different rotations every quarter. Many students, might be done after their traditional diploma, and then some students move on to this specialized opportunity. But I do believe we could have up to 3 spots in that program for students with open enrollment, and that would also go through a procedure where they would do an interview day and be selected into the program. So there would be benchmarks for who can be accepted. Other than that, I would recommend all of our other programming. So our little ones, our early childhood 4K program, K through 6, 7, 12, that the district have 0 spaces for the next school year, just so that we can best meet the students who come to us in this area day to day with their specialized needs. Questions I can answer?
Cost, do we get all the cost of open enrollment students, all the revenue when they come in? We get their, just like every other student?
Yeah, there's a formula. Mm-hmm.
And then, I know it's not many, and, there's 3 and one and the other, but we just got done with a discussion like we can't get enough special ed aides. I know it's not much, it's just a little thing, but do we want to set a policy of taking more in when we don't have enough aides as it is?
So Jenny's recommendation, G took that into account. She feels the only special ed programs that we could take additional students would be that PODS and Project Search, no other programs.
Yeah, and to participate in that, the students have to have a pretty high level of independence and ability that they fit within the program, because they're specialized programs, so the students are seeking those programs. And so I believe that keeping the staff the same in both those programs, we'd still be able to meet students' needs without issue.
Well, I'm glad they're finally making the distinction between caseload and workload.
Correct.
Me too.
Yes. One student in the program to another student is just totally different, so that's being worked into your formulas now. Good.
Yeah.
I just want to clarify, because I don't think it is correct that we receive 100% funding for people who enroll in, students who enroll in. So could we just explain to board and community what happens when a student enrolls in or a student enrolls out related to the funding for that student?
Sure. So the resident district gets a portion of that, approximately $11,000. For regular ed students, it's a little bit more for special ed, and then the district that they're coming to gets a portion of that. So it is not 100%, but we do get dollars for all of the students that we do take in through open enrollment.
Do you know what the portion is?
I think that somewhere around 3,000 to 4,000
It's
is
about
retained.
2/3, 1/3, approximately.
So then it would be important to know how many are coming in, how many are leaving. I know we've had figures on that before.
Yep.
Do we have those numbers?
We do have those numbers, and annually we give an update to the board on those numbers, which we'll continue to do.
Good point, Meg.
When, at the end of the year or before?
At the end of the year, we'll know exactly, because students are coming and going
all the
throughout
time.
the entire year.
Oh, really?
Yep.
So if we decided, this is something we're gonna be,
Yeah, so the board would need to
It's 2 action
look at both of
items.
those action items under the recommendation, both the general ed seats and then seats in specialized programs. And I listed the recommendation for the motion there.
Though I would be concerned with the unlimited number bothers me. Because I mean, do you remember just about how many we were below, right? More were leaving than were coming in last.
Correct.
regular
More were
cycle.
leaving than were coming in. With the unlimited G, they actually open enroll to a district. They don't necessarily open enroll to a school. They give us their top choices. So if someone's coming from another district, we can place them, if it's elementary, for example, in a building where they might have lower class sizes. So that's why we feel comfortable with the unlimited. And then with our secondary schools, we offer most of the time several sections to courses. So again, we can place them in a section that might not have as many students. And we've not been in any trouble with that unlimited number to date, so.
The label just bothers me,
Yeah.
because we're putting ourselves in a position that we may rue.
Yeah, if I give you an example though, when I was in Amherst, for example, and we actually, for various reasons, we brought in a lot more scholars than left, but it impacted our budget about $1 million, which for us was real money. Now in our district, we know we're down 200 some students since COVID, so if we can bring in students, we have a great product here, and so we hope, we know we're helping our families, but it's also very advantageous to our district to bring in as many students as we possibly can, regular ed students.
Regular ed.
Regular
Regular ed.
Well,
would be
if
the
they
unlimited.
Qualification.
Yeah, if we said no, then still the same number would leave. I mean, that wouldn't have any effect on them, but,
No, you're right, except that it replaces, like,
Yeah,
down
yeah.
200. If
I understand,
yeah,
it's just the word unlimited
Yeah.
bothers me.
And when they complete the application, G, they list a first choice and a second choice as their school. And in some instances, we're not able to honor either of those, and we're able to honor a third choice that they've not listed, and they decline.
Correct.
Right.
Well, when you mention class sizes too, to me, all class sizes are too big, you know?
Right.
So if you're just saying, well, we can put them here and we can put them there,
So, gee, I think would that be your biggest concern? Because that would be my biggest concern. Say, I don't foresee this happening. This is quite the opposite of what I'm about to say. But if the floodgates, everybody from Wausau School District decided to come here, great, we've got an extra $100 million, but the class sizes are like 1,000 per class.
well, we don't get all of that money.
Yeah, but their budget's
Right.
a lot bigger than 100 million, so we probably.
Yeah. With the amount of money, I mean, it would end up working itself out. We'd have a massive budget at that point, but then it could come at the cost of education.
In some way, I think a person could say, we'll take this many, because, you know, divide the number of teachers by the number of kids and all that.
Sure.
I mean, as a general idea, it's just that word bothers me.
I got you.
I
It's
don't
another
like that
word.
anything, unlimited.
Well, and it's just on a yearly basis. I mean, if we start to get an influx and we don't feel like we have the staff to cover it, we, in the next year, would not recommend.
So we're not legally
No.
tied to this
We are.
For the
By
year.
statute, you have to make a decision.
if we vote on
And,
this.
mhm.
We have to vote on it now?
Yes.
Again,
Yes.
again, if we take a look at the reality, I mean, I believe our opt-out has been in the 200s range, around 240. Our opt-ins have been in the like 150 range. I mean, in our district is a district of 7,000 plus students. So the additional opt-in students has not been a huge number, although we have, as a board, been strongly encouraging administration to support encouraging families to see the great school district that we have. So this has been a recommendation that has been made in the 10 years I've been on the board, and we have never run into any issue whatsoever. The same with the special ed recommendation. Again, just recognition of our staffing and in particular the increasing sped needs of students within our district. So I'm strongly supportive of all of the recommendations.
Any other comments, questions? Going once, going twice. We'll take the first motion we're looking for a motion to approve on unlimited, general education 4K seats, and unlimited general education non-resident seats available under open enrollment for the 2024-2025 school year.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? No. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. I'll put my glass on for the next motion. The motion to approve 0 multi-categorical all disability areas for early childhood programming, 0 multi-categorical all disability areas for grades K-6 in person, 0 multi-categorical all disability areas for grades 7 through 12, Ben PJ Spash CFC in person, 1 multi-categorical all disability areas for pods, and 3 multi-categorical all disability areas for Project Search available for the 24-25 school year. I'm looking for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Sensing none. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Yeah, you're welcome.
Thank you, Jenny. Excellent report. Takes us to general, and we have the 2024 WASB resolutions, and that is going to be, are you taking this?
Sure, I can take this. So in December, we shared with the board the resolutions that are being proposed from WASB that we need to take action on today to give G direction when he goes to the convention next week. In addition, WASB did send out one additional resolution. Everyone should have received that in their emails. That's being proposed. So at this point, we'd asked the board to give us any feedback, questions, concerns, clarifications. We did not receive any, but I do think that, you know, we want to allow some time for the board to have some discussion about the resolution so that G has some direction for next week.
Anybody has input for G, or G if you have comments or questions?
Well, I called you with some things. First, I'd like to say, I don't want to spend a lot of time on this because it could spend forever on this. But I do, after being at a meeting last year, I don't know if any of these will ever see the light of day at our legislature. But given that, I was amazed at how important our colleagues around the state think these are. I mean, they really get emotional about defending their resolutions. So then I thought to myself, then I should think it's important. If they think it's important, then I should think it's important too. So they spent a lot of time. And it was a debacle because people left, it took so long. So my feeling was, and you had some recommendations, is like, if we're okay with all these, but I'm not okay with one of them, and I know I expressed two of them. But the main one is, the one I object to is the last one. Yeah, the general, it starts on page 7, and there's a whole bunch of them under that general policy. And it has to do with teacher education, licensure, and so forth. My feeling for that whole thing is it just lowers, they're just looking for ways to lower the bar to become teachers. And especially 4.68, charter school teachers. Charter school teachers now carry a license to teach any subject. Am I right? If you have a charter school license.
Oh, 152, yes.
Yeah, and I just think that being a retired teacher, that's a license to teach anything, I don't know how anybody would do that, and I don't know how it does justice for kids. So I would not be in favor of that particular one, 4.68. And then the one with the Office of School Safety.
Numbers that.
I'm looking, I had it written down here.
2407 on page 3.
Okay. I mean, to me, safety is really important, and my feeling is funding an Office of School Safety, which is, you know, they wanted to take that out of the budget, right, the last time? So they want to, this says we want to keep funding it. My view is they're not going to do you any good when the guy's walking down the street with a gun and he's coming to your school. They're sitting in an office somewhere in Madison. So I've advocated before, and it sounds, to me, it even sounds weird to me. I'd like to see an armed policeman at every school in Wisconsin, because
Well,
if
that's
they're,
not on there.
what?
Not on there, he said.
No, that's what I want.
Yeah.
This thing doesn't go far enough, and I want, for me, it's my opinion only, as one person at the delegation, and one person at the school board, that I don't want to see money go to something that isn't, that I don't believe really goes to safety, at the very moment that you really need a person there. So those are the two, and the rest, I'm happy to go by the school board's recommendations, and I assume they're yes on all the others if nobody says anything. I'll go by whatever the school board says on any of them, but those are my two concerns.
Just push back a little bit on the 2407, the school safety, because what that money would be used for is to get grants, which I don't know about 4 or 5 years ago, there was a grant through the federal government to give all kinds of money through the state of Wisconsin for improving real security things in the school, like redoing your offices and special glass and special doors, et cetera, et cetera. That came all through granting efforts by somebody, I don't know who. It also allows for training for school staff, so that our school staffs throughout the state can get trained in the measures that are necessary and kind of the avant-garde ones, because it's always changing. You know, when you and I were doing training for intruders, it all changed in the last, through time, because of what people learned about when they had tragedies, unfortunately. So that office is meant to be a collective of information and resources for the whole state. So right, that one person isn't going to be there to address an intruder, but that money might be well spent if they're able to garner grants for the schools in our state, and they're able to provide training, just like a CISA does, for the schools in our state. So anyway, I might be more supportive of that one. I also would think the 4.68 of giving a unilateral or a universal license to any teacher is certainly inappropriate, watering down. I would say that I would agree with you that my personal opinion is I wouldn't want to see that particular one supported, but I would support 24.07 because I think it could be valuable to the teachers in our district.
I think the number was 100 million from the federal government. Was that just to Wisconsin, or to the whole United States?
That was probably for the state. That's not a lot.
Yeah, well, it's not even for the state.
Yeah.
I mean,
Considering our intercom system's $500,000.
In
well,
one
that's
building.
the thing is, Miguel, I go in and out of schools all the time.
Yeah.
I could tell you what's easy to get into, what's hard to get into. Invariably, you have a secretary that's going to make the decision if you can go in the front door.
Yeah.
And they don't have the training to make that decision. And so I guess maybe it's a little overkill, I'm thinking of, but for our district, it would be like, say, 70,000 for armed policemen at every school. That's about, every elementary school, that's about $630,000. And then, I don't know, it's my opinion. And
We
I
have
know it doesn't
used-
go far, but it's my opinion.
We have used the Office of School Safety for quite a bit. Grants, we've used them for guidance for our safety plans. We've used them for training for staff. So I would be supportive of that resolution just for that purpose. They've provided us a wealth of information and guidance as we work through
Question on that note, Corey, what did we do before this existed, that department?
My experience has only been working with that department. Yeah.
I think that I was on this committee, the resolution committee, the group that puts it together for 3 years at the state level. And, again, these resolutions go forward. The membership either votes to approve or not approve. If they approve, the resolution goes into the WASB lobbying book to provide the WAB staff with direction about how to utilize their efforts on behalf of districts around our state. An item like this, I think what I came to realize is we all, districts around the state, are very unique. We as a district are very blessed with the wonderful resources we have in this community, with our sheriff's department, our police departments, our staff, the university. We also need support from this agency, an agency that specifically focuses on school safety. So I can see the benefits for our district, but I also see the reality of the benefits for so many districts in our state that don't have the resources that we have and are in need of that extra bit of support from the state. They're small communities, incredibly large cities. So for that purpose, I think from that broad perspective of what WASB does, supporting all of us across the state, I would be in favor of this.
Perhaps the best way of doing it, and tell me if you feel comfortable with this, G, is to vote for the approval of all of them except for 24.07 and 4.68, and then have a separate vote for each of those, and that will give you direction.
Any way to expedite it is fine with me. My objections are my own.
No, but
Everybody
you have a
else's.
voice, though. I mean,
Well, how much money did we get from the OSS last year, do you know?
Oh, I don't off the top of my head. I can find that out, how much we've received in grants in the past.
Can we look at 4.8?
okay, 4.8 as well.
Specifically, letter B,
What page?
page 9. Letter B specifically, it talks about teacher evaluation. That would include test assessment, all test and assessment results as a part of criteria for evaluating teachers. If we were to vote for this, our teachers would do poorly. Because our assessment, especially at the high school, was poor. Are we willing to say that how we evaluate our teachers is based on a test?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. This one I missed. It's, and you know, all of us who've been in teaching know that my feeling is like the best teachers should take the classes for the kids who have a harder time learning. But that isn't what happens. A lot of times your more experienced teachers will be teaching the higher level courses. The new person in gets the tough crew. And if you're evaluated on your students' results, you may be a great teacher. If your students are the toughest kids in the school, you may come out at the bottom of the scale. That's not fair.
I think on this particular resolution, they don't name specifically what the assessment is or that would need to be used. This isn't a significant departure from what we currently do in our current evaluation model. So every teacher is required to write a student learning objective on an annual
SLO,
basis.
right, yep.
Yep, an SLO, and within that SLO, they typically use assessment data. So sometimes that's universal screening data, sometimes those are summative assessments, sometimes those are common assessments that are developed by a grade level or a department. So I don't see this as a significant departure from what we currently do within our current framework and our current model. They don't name that we have to use forward exam as the assessment or measure. If that were to occur, Alex, I probably would have the same reservation or hesitation. But absent that piece of information, I don't have that concern, unless others see that differently.
I agree.
I guess for me, the other thing that I feel like we don't have the information on this, because this is noting that Resolution 2411 related to licensure already has existing resolutions relating to certification licensure in the resolutions book of 36 to 38 and existing 4.8 evaluations at page 38. And so what they're talking about with this is repealing and recreating what currently exists. And without knowing what currently exists, I don't know if they're tightening things up or if they're loosening things up.
Right.
So I'm feeling a little bit at a loss for being able even to take a position on this, because, so I guess my recommendation would be to have G, if you're willing to do it, you know, take a look at what those existing resolutions are, because they're not giving us any information about what it is what they're trying to change.
We got them right here. I won't look at them now.
You got them?
I'll just pretend I'm listening while I'm no. I'd be happy to, I will tell you this, right in here, it's on the docket to be even changed more, and it's pending.
Yeah.
All right.
I think this one they may not even get to based on what happened last year,
Right.
Jay, where they shut.
Well, there are a lot less,
Yeah.
and they are encouraging, I'm surprised they're not piggybacking on what wasn't done last year. They just said, forget it.
Yep.
So I'm hopeful that it'll be more.
What about sending G and saying to G, we support, we know we have, it sounds like, unless some people haven't spoke yet, but it sounds like we have general support for all of them. With 24.07 and 4.68, there's nothing wrong with you expressing your opinion. That's why you're going there. You're going to give your opinion, and also expressing the opinion of other people on the board. If you give both sides of that, then that's what we
Yeah,
have.
I can do that, but ultimately you have to vote. You know, so I'm interested in what the board wants to, and I know it says in here, I have some latitude, but I don't wanna 8-1 and say,
Do this.
In that case, I guess what I'd
forget all
ask-
you guys, I'm just gonna vote the way I want.
To help you, I think, G, what I'd ask is that the board, if someone makes the motion to approve all of the resolutions except for 24.07 and 4.68, and then we'll vote all those separately, and you'll certainly have an indication of where the hearts of the board are. And after that, you still have the ability to adjust accordingly.
Yeah,
based on the
however you
conversation.
wanna do it.
So at this point, I'm looking for a motion to approve all the resolutions except for 24.07. Yes?
Quick question before we do that. I'll make it quick, I think, depending on your answers. For 4.635, so if we employ a clinical counselor, do they need an educator license in order to be employed by us?
Yes.
So what do we do if they don't for these services? We have counselors, and they're all in-house, and they all have educator's license. So this is just saying that we're just gonna give them the license, and they don't have to, or what is this? I don't get it.
Yeah, we don't have that right now, but right now, all of our counselors went through school counseling, but potentially you're somewhere where maybe you just can't find someone who's gone through a school counseling, but maybe they went through clinical mental health counseling, but they're interested in working in schools. So typically, they could potentially get a license with stipulations and work for us, maybe, depending on their background, maybe not. This would allow them, if they had that, like, state license to work in a private practice, that they could automatically get an educational school counselor license as a clinical mental health.
With stipulations, correct?
I'm
Or not?
sure.
That would be dependent on each individual.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
No further
Sorry,
questions.
and I didn't see that you had a comment.
No, that's all right. I was waiting to see if somebody answered
Didn't
it
mean to
somehow.
roll over you there. All right, any other comments or questions before we look for a motion? Sensing none. I'm still looking for a motion then to approve all of them except for 24.07 and 4.68, which we'll take individually.
So moved.
Second.
No further discussion. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Now I'm looking for a motion to, I want to say approve 24.07, and just for your recollection, that was the resolution regarding the support for the statewide security.
Office of School Safety.
Yeah, also for school safety, thank you. So if you're in favor of that, first of all, we need a motion to support that resolution, 24.07.
So moved.
Second.
All right, and then, all those in favor of supporting this particular motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, I guess that, we'll look to vote for that then, G. The other one is 4.68, which allows for the universal licensing for people serving in charter schools. I'm looking for approval of that motion. Is there a motion to approve?
So I guess just clarification, G, were you raising concerns about the whole of 4.6 or?
I didn't like a lot of it, but I don't want to spend a lot of time parsing.
You mentioned 4.68.
Little things, yeah.
Specifically,
That's
charter
the one I
schools,
mentioned, though.
teachers.
Okay.
That is the one that supports allowing teachers granted charter school license in a particular subject area to teach additional subjects. I think G expressed concern with it. I also indicated I expressed concern with it. But we're looking right now, it's to support that resolution on 4.68. We're looking for a potential motion to support that resolution. Going once, I'm looking for support for the motion to support that resolution. Going twice, I'm looking for support for that resolution. To support that resolution, going 3 times, it dies from lack of a motion then. So we will not support that particular motion at the.
It's all right if I vote
meeting.
no on that one.
Yes, that's what it comes down to. Is that all right?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, everyone.
And that brings us to the, I believe, the budget evaluation process. And who's going to speak on that? Chris is going to.
Step up here. I didn't even crank my neck. So wanted to provide the board and the community with an update on the budget evaluation process, primarily focused on at Ed Services. We looked specifically at the updates relative to the program evaluation process as well as the staffing evaluation process, which was the 2 areas of budget evaluation where we have the most significant updates at this point. Corey, I might need you to.
That's fine.
Can you just advance for me?
Maybe.
Should just be the arrow.
Stuck.
Moving on now.
There we go. So the budget evaluation process is categorized obviously as comprehensive and ongoing. Last year in the fall, we implemented a budget review process. We continued to review control and reduction measures, and we established a position review and staffing baseline that was done in collaboration with our Business Services Department and Human Resources. We also established a program review process, which is what we'll speak to specifically tonight. Again, I'd like to point out that this program review process really was developed internally, not developed based on any model or anything that we're replicating. So when we spoke with Ed Services, we were really looking for feedback from committee members to indicate what other elements of programming might we need to consider as part of this overall program evaluation process. This fall, we were finalizing the assessment of operational needs, and we used that data, obviously, to arrive at the $14 million referendum question that the board elected to bring forward to the community on April 2nd. And that decision was made on December 11th. This winter, we've continued the program review and budget evaluation process. We continue to review open positions and continue to sort of keep an eye on that baseline staffing and those recommendations that we've identified. We've also been working to consistently inform all stakeholders of the district financial needs and solution provided through the referendum that we've proposed.
Does not want to go, Chris.
Well, it was working fine when I was doing it.
Do you want to try your clicker again?
Where's your fancy clicker?
Try.
No.
Hit page down. See what you want to do.
I'm going to pull it
Yeah,
up.
right. No,
I'm going
right?
to pull it up.
I make a motion to.
Oh, something's happening. Carlynn's got the magic.
Carlynn's got a fancy touch.
There we go. All right.
Oh, Corey.
All right. And this brings us to the program evaluation. So we have, in the evaluation process, we've reviewed staffing and enrollment trends. We've looked at student outcomes. We've also looked at aligning the program review to our graduation requirements. So in other words, which courses and programs align to the 23.5 credits that we have as graduation requirements at SPASH. We've looked at also alignment to district goals, the impact of programming on academic success, the development of skills and knowledge relative to essential standards. And we've evaluated up to this point 13 of the 39 programs that have been identified. And over on the right-hand side of the slide, you see there in very small print, those are the 13 programs that we've had the opportunity to work our way through up to this point. Oh, no.
She's really going.
Oh, no.
We're definitely moving forward together here.
Oh, that just worked?
Okay.
It's a team effort.
So in the process of program evaluation, we have eliminated 9 total courses. Again, I mentioned this at our Educational Services Committee meeting, that the 9 courses that have been eliminated were primarily the every other day courses that were part of the old junior high schedule. The one course in addition to those every other day courses that has been eliminated was the food sciences course, and that was eliminated as a result of low or declining enrollment over the last 2 years. We do, as part of the overall process, continue to monitor courses with increasing or decreasing enrollment. In other words, using that to inform staffing decisions or where we might need to or could potentially gather some efficiencies back by decreasing or increasing number of sections that we're offering. We continue to identify the essential standards that are taught in each of the courses and each of the programs we're analyzing. That has revealed some interesting instances where perhaps we have some standards that are being taught in multiple courses or being covered in multiple courses. So we're identifying some of them that are duplicative. We continue to analyze courses in sequencing to ensure that students have access to those college and career credit courses, college and career readiness courses that they need by the time they graduate. And we continue to monitor our programming in alignment with those graduation requirements, as I referenced earlier. In the staffing arena, as part of the budget evaluation process, we have and we continue to do a comprehensive evaluation of all positions that become available. Up to this point to date, we've evaluated 169 total staff positions. 158 of those 169 were filled as is. 4 of those positions are still currently frozen. There was a clarification question asked at our Ed Services meeting about what does it mean when a position is frozen. It means that we have approved to fill the position, but perhaps for whatever reason, maybe an inability to fill the position, or maybe administrators at a particular site indicating that they'd like to monitor a temporary solution. In other words, we may not need to fill it permanently, and we filled some of those positions temporarily. Those are what we would categorize as a frozen position. 4 positions in total were decreased or eliminated. I do want to point out that those were not 4 1.0 FTE positions, that some of those were partial positions, as in 0.4 or 0.6.
And how many did we add in? Because we added in interventionists, 2 interventionists, right? We voted to approve interventionists. And
2 or 3 because those numbers don't.
There was a
add up to
transition coordinator position.
Right.
Yep. And
Teaching staff.
I've got it.
Beth, do you remember?
2 food service, 3 student-specific spedias, and transition.
And a spash cook.
And the spash cook. This slide really highlights a review of information that the board and the community have seen in the past as part of preparation for the referendum on April 2nd. The one thing that's different on this slide that I want to point out is the additional information on the left-hand side of the slide. These are grant opportunities that the district is pursuing in an effort to address the deficiency or the budget deficit that we're currently operating under. We recognize and acknowledge that we can't budget based on one-time funds or grant funds that become available, but we do want to acknowledge the work that's being done to address the budget shortfalls that we're currently experiencing, and we do want to acknowledge the generosity of our community and some of those donors that have made significant contributions to address our budget shortfall. So in short, we land in the same place that we landed prior with, even with those updates. A referendum is still needed to secure adequate funding for academic programs and services and resources. We do have those primary goals to retain high-quality teachers and staff, to maintain the current level of academic programming that we currently offer. In preparation for the referendum, I think it's important to note that as part of budget evaluation, we did have a community survey that was conducted by Morris Leatherman, And the primary area of value that was identified by community members that were surveyed was the broad scope of academic offerings and programming that we have available to our students. So that is one area that in the process of evaluating the budget, we are trying to preserve, at least to the greatest degree possible. We want to obviously continue to strengthen behavior and mental health supports for students, address safety and security infrastructure, reestablish a healthy fund balance. We started off our meeting tonight talking about that fund balance as part of the audit, to fund the 10-year facility and maintenance plan, to maintain technology infrastructure. Our projected budget deficit in 23-24, which is the budget we're currently living now, is approximately $5 million, and the projected budget deficit in approximately 4 years, absent a successful referendum, would be approximately $10 million. Gives a little bit of additional insight into how we arrived at that $14 million figure when we generated the final question. Next steps, on December 11th, as I referenced earlier, the school board had approved placing the referendum question on the April 2nd ballot. January and February, we are in the throes of those comprehensive community engagement and informational sessions that we're running. We'll also provide monthly supports to the school, or monthly updates to the school board on upcoming events and that are part of the information campaign. And in March, we'll continue that information campaign leading up to that hopefully successful April referendum vote. This high-level overview, a quick review of a lot of what we spent a significant amount of time talking about at Ed Services, but I'd be happy to entertain any questions that folks might have.
So I have a question with respect to one of the final lines, which is the projected budget deficit in 4 years without a successful referendum of $10 million. Now, we can see a trend. We were at about, based on tonight's audit report, 2.3 million deficit this year, 5 million projected for 2023-24, 10 million projected beyond that. We have not yet, as a board, heard or had any conversations about what does that mean in practical terms for our district. If we wind up with deficit, because this year it was 2.6 that, kind of ate into our general fund. And next year it's projected to, or this current one we're in is projected to be about 5 million, which would be, again, further depleting our fund balance. So, and I don't know if this is the time. I guess my conversation is administration having conversations about what steps the district would have to take to support that ever increasing decrease of our budget.
Should the referendum not pass.
Should the referendum not pass.
And I think it's a great point, Meg. And as part of the information campaign, Corey's been really intentional sharing with groups sort of the outcome of not passing potentially the referendum in terms of saying we really all will feel it. We believe that the work we've done around program evaluation gives us the information we need to make some really informed decisions. If we find ourselves on April 3rd in a situation where the referendum has not passed, there will likely be some program cuts that need to occur. There will be potentially larger class sizes. So when we talk about what does that look like in reality, if that deficit continues to grow and we don't address it via a successful referendum, those are some real practical tangibles in terms of what that will look like. So Corey's done an excellent job of sharing that. We don't include it here necessarily in print, but it certainly has been part of the narrative that we've been sharing when we've been out doing those information sessions.
That would be helpful for me as a board member, for you to bring that forward to the board. Sooner rather than later. I guess I'd like to be able to have a good understanding myself.
Sure. And as we work through this program evaluation, we'll be able to have a better sense of what that's going to look like exactly. We've not finalized anything yet, but we're learning a lot as we go through that process, and we'll most definitely bring the board abreast once we know what that is. But increased class sizes, compromised school safety and security, probably a reduction in programming. I mean, it could address all of that, potentially increased transportation routes. I mean, who knows? Extracurriculars, athletics. I mean, all of us are going to feel it in one way or another. But the final list has not been determined to date.
Megan, it sounds like you're asking for some talking points not only for yourself, but as you speak to constituents about what a failed referendum would look like. And we know that in general, these things won't be supported, but maybe some specifics in terms of some rough numbers about, so that we can give them some detail of what it really means. I know you can't be too specific, but I think some clarification would be helpful, not only to the board, but to the people who are going to make the decision.
Okay.
I believe there was a slide in the presentation. Corey, maybe we could check back with Sarah on, I think we categorized it as the cost of inaction.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think we could just go back and reference that, and maybe we could get that out to board members as some talking points.
Sure.
That would be helpful.
We can do that.
This is for information only, but are there other questions or comments or clarification you're asking from Chris at this point?
Well, when Meg was talking about, being a little more definitive, I guess, as to what's gonna happen.
Just to provide facts about, because at a certain point in time, we know it will no longer be sustainable for us to take more dollars out of our fund balance, because we will then very quickly, rapidly go into short-term borrowing, which is going to increase interest costs, it's going to increase borrowing costs, which then is going to have a cascading impact on our general budget.
And takes away from students.
Takes away from education.
When you're talking about the fund balance, I was wondering, because I know Tom gave us that chart where we were actually in the hole for a short period of time recently. We didn't have to borrow though, but I mean, our money comes in all in one bunch, but we have to spend it regularly. Have they ever talked about allocating the money on a regular basis instead of throwing it all in one bunch and?
They don't care.
No, and part of it is when people pay their property taxes too. I mean, so part of it has to do with when those payments are also due.
But I would think they could figure out a way, I mean, people live that way, people make a bunch of money and figure out how to divvy it out all during the year. Is it just like another way to control what you do, something? Because you wouldn't need the fund balance then if they gave it to you as you used it.
There's so many things involved in that.
Not their problem, G. Yeah. The other thing is, that's one thing when you say, like Dennis said, you can't get specific because as soon as you throw out programs you're gonna cut, all of a sudden it's a weapon. And we've seen that happen many times.
And that's not my intent at all. For me, I think it's just I think it's important for voters to have the facts
What
and
would
to
the
have an
school district look
understanding.
like for your kid? What would
Right.
the school district look like for your kid next year?
Right.
I also just want to note, Dennis raised some really good points at the committee meeting about the non-program portions of our budget. And I know in the school board update we all received a pie that told us kind of what we're talking about. I think that also might be helpful for us as, I don't know if at committee or at board level, just to have a conversation about I know what the 12 million is. I know that's the general fund dollars that go into our special ed fund, and that we have no control over what that number is at the end of each year. But in terms of the others, it would be helpful for me, both in terms of knowledge about this whole budget overview process, but also an idea of what is controllable and what is not controllable within those portions, for us to have that understanding in the event, well, number one, because we need to be looking at that, but then number two, in the event that we need to take a look at that down the road.
Sure.
That would be helpful too.
Yep.
I also have a question, and Meg had brought this up. You said that we had lost 240-ish students. Have we done anything to reach out to those students to see where they left and to try to attract them back?
It was about 225 students, I believe, was the final number, 222, 225. And we've generated a list. Obviously, we've gone as far, Alex, as to, identify the students that have enrolled in another district or are currently doing a virtual learning option. But we do have a handful of students that we've not been able to reach, that we've not been able to contact, and we're not sure exactly where they've gone. So we've not gone beyond that layer. So we've identified where students have gone. We've confirmed that those students have indeed enrolled in another location or another educational option, but we've not dug into those students that were unclear on where they're currently residing or where they're currently receiving education.
And correct me, do we have a virtual option school? Because I see Waves in Wausau, or Bridges in Merrill, or Central Oaks in Rapids. Do we have something of that caliber? Or in Appleton, they have a huge one. I was talking to people over Christmas that live in district that go to these other virtual programs.
There's still district dollars.
But we're losing district dollars
Right.
to students who have elected to go virtual, fine. But we're losing the money because we don't offer the programming.
So we don't have a virtual school per se. We do have our online learning center that's available at SPASH, but beyond that, that's all that we have.
But we have the
currently.
rural.
And we do have seats available in the Rural
RVA.
Virtual
We have the-
Academy.
Right.
Right,
Partnership with
but
the rural-
that's, and we collaborate with them.
RVA, we only get, how much do we pay per pupil RVA?
Oh, gosh. I don't know it off the top. Corey, do
I
you
don't
know
either
who we
off the
pay
top
at
of
the
my
top?
head. We have a few students that utilize RVA, not a large number, but
But
you're
that's
right.
run through Merrill as well. Right, Merrill, Medford. That's run through Medford.
Yeah.
Like, we're missing opportunities when we have neighboring districts that have huge virtual programs now, massive, and we have an online learning center. Great, not disparaging. Opportunity, sure, there's opportunity cost, like that's associated.
Sure.
But when we weigh them out, there's a lot of benefit to this when we're looking at this.
Maybe, and I appreciate how far you've gone, but maybe a possible next step, or one of the next steps, is to contact, because you know how many are in virtual schools.
Yes.
Even
Yes.
contacting those people and saying, if we had our own virtual school, would you apply here? Then we'd have some inkling as to whether it's worth it or not to put that time and resources. But, usually my experience has been in a number of districts where we're trying to get people back. Once they're gone, it's really tough to.
It's tough to get them back,
Because now
right.
they're into a new routine. And
But
they
then we
haven't-
can't lose them to begin with,
So
Right.
Alex,
especially through that.
in places like Rapids and Merrill, are they using it as in-house, or are they trying to attract students from?
Oh, they
remote?
attract
It's
huge.
both.
I will say, though, that the majority of the students that we lose through open enrollment are going not for the virtual
virtual.
option. We've found that they're going for Amherst is a place that's a unique opportunity.
It
Tomorrow
might be,
River.
I mentioned, but I looked at it, I want to say 3 years ago. But it might be helpful for board members to get the numbers, because, we have them, I think they're accessible. And, what I found was that a significant number of our students were going to Amherst, a significant number of our students were going to Auburndale.
First was the other.
And, which is kind of the other end of our district that offers,
tomorrow.
pre-K to, high school, offering in a rural area of the community where a number of our district residents live. But I think it might be helpful for, if it isn't too much trouble to pull that and provide that information to the board, because then we would have a good sense of, where students are choosing to go versus staying with the district.
And we do have that data. It wouldn't be hard to pull up. I believe we've shared it at one other time. It would just be looking back.
Yep.
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 All right, any other questions, comments, or clarification from the board? This is for information only, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Chris.
Chris and all those. And our next school board meeting will be on February 12th, 2024, and then March 11th, 2024. Education Services Committee will meet the first Monday of the month, and the Business Service Committee will meet the first Monday of the month at 6:30, Education at 5:30. And this time, we'd like to go into closed session.
I vote that we go into closed session.
Second.
Oh, I'm
I
sorry.
think,
have to read the whole
we
thing
need
here.
to read what it's
Yeah,
under.
thank you. Considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee, specifically to consider administrative contracts. And that is our purpose. So we need a vote to go into
Yes.
closed
Need a
session.
roll call.
Roll
So
call.
we had a motion by Alex and a second by
Second, for me.
G. Okay, Mr. Summers,
Yes.
Mr. Pope,
Emphatically.
Yes.
Mr. Campos,
Yes.
Ms. Reno,
Yes.
Mr. Kowalski,
Oh, yes.
Ms. Portson,
Yes.
Ms. Erler,
Yes.
Mr. Robbie.
Yes.
And motion carries.
So we're now in closed session.
Barb, my
Need a break?
times have changed.
Yeah.
I said
You
my
need a break?
times
We need a
have
break?
changed.
We just need a couple minutes